Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. Excuse me. It's a little early in the morning for me, hence my kind of wild hair. So, I wanted to hop on here before I go pick up kiddos to talk a bit about this Mercury retrograde that stationed retrograde yesterday on the, oh, excuse me, on the 25th. So, it will station direct on December 15th. So it's going from 22 degrees Sagittarius to 6 degrees Sagittarius. Before I get into this and I share the chart with you, I wanted to let you guys know or to reiterate that it is the Sagittarius birthday special going on right now. So if you are a Sag and you want to get a birthday reading where I go over your natal chart, which is your soul's evolutionary intent in this lifetime, or any questions you have about your own natal chart through the lens of evolutionary astrology, book that. I also go over your solar return, which is the things that will be coming up this year for you to work with your own evolutionary intent. I find both to be really valuable. I love working with clients and and answering any of the questions that they ask pertaining to their chart or their solar return or anything that is even just going on in your life. I know that a lot of us have a lot going on. Also, my Goddess Asteroid series starts on December 7th. And this is a five class. It's a class series with 5 classes in it. And the first class that I'm doing is Lilith in series. And I mean, what I want to say about this first class is it's a really important class for understanding not only the myth and the archetypes within astrology of Lilith and Ceres, but when we're looking at dynamics of who one is in their most natural sense, meaning that hasn't been distorted through conditioning of a patriarchal notion, and really wanting to recover one's own soul sovereignty through natural law. This is an amazing class that is starting this off. The whole class series is $135. And if you want to just pay a drop-in fee, that's only $35 per each class. That's on my website. I am old school. You will have to email me and let me know if you want to participate, and if so, which class or the whole class series, and I'll send an invoice. And then once that's paid, I will send you the links to all of the classes. I will be doing a Q&A with each one of the classes that I'm doing. The class list, again, is on my website, so go ahead and check that out. I've already had a few people sign up for this. I'm excited about it. Anyone who's watched me for any amount of time knows how much I love asteroids and how much I also love planetary nodes, which I'll have to do another class series on that at some point in time. But I think this is a really powerful time to be talking about the archetypes of these asteroids. There's a whole list of different ones that I'm doing. I've grouped them into 2 because they are asteroids that, when combined together, really can reflect deep dynamics in someone's natal chart. There's a symbiosis that goes with the asteroids that I'm pairing together. And so very much looking forward to teaching all of this and seeing who all signs up and to gather in community. I love meeting each one of you, and we are in a time where we need to be around more like-minded individuals, or to find our group of people, especially with Pluto and Aquarius, and this gives a really good opportunity to do that. So reach out. And that's my spiel for what I'm offering right now. So, without further ado, let's talk about Mercury retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius. Let's first talk about the archetype of Mercury, and then I'm going to bring in Sag. That way we can combine these, synthesize it, and then I will pull up the chart and I will show you what's going on. And also, there is a transit with Mercury in a what we call a T square to Saturn, and including Jupiter, Mercury's ruler. So has a dual nature to it. It is the ruler of two signs. It is the ruler of Gemini and of Virgo. And Mercury is all about the collection of information or the messages that we receive. It is our way where we feel called to study something, how we study it, especially if you're looking at something in your own natal chart. Mercury will tell you a lot about what it is that you're drawn to learn about in tandem with yourself, with others. And Mercury correlating to Gemini is very much about going out, reading the books, watching the TED Talks, writing, conversating, communicating, its expression of one's voice. And it is the Mercury is the left part of the brain. It's the logical, linear way of chronologically ordering things together. Whereas Virgo, the other sign that co-rules Mercury, is the feminine energy, the yin energy, whereas Gemini is the yang energy, the masculine energy, the energy moving out. We're going out into the world, we're finding things, we're receiving, gathering information, whereas Virgo is yin, feminine energy, moving inwards towards the center. And this is really where we can understand our own inner gnosis. It's through taking that information that we've gathered in Gemini, and then we can gather all the information we want in Gemini, but sometimes it's not synthesized. A student who studies and is able to assimilate information is more in the Virgo principle. That's why Virgo is correlated to the archetype of the apprentice. It's where we get to have an internalized understanding of information. And then we get to improve upon it. It's like, oh, I didn't really understand what that is. I've taken all of these Gemini-like notes, and now I want to really study and understand what this is meaning, what this is correlating to. Thus, I'm having to improve upon the function of the information that I've gathered. That is Virgo. So it helps to give structure to what we're learning and to have an inner gnosis of what it is that we've taken in. This is a really interesting when we bring in Mercury retrograde, because if Mercury is about the left linear logical way of thinking and assimilating things, what ends up happening with Mercury retrograde is that there's an emphasis on the right brain, which is actually more of a Sagittarian function. And so we have this almost double infusion of energy with Mercury being retrograde. It's telling us to go in and to use our intuition, our right brain. And then we have Sagittarius that is correlating with the intuition. Sagittarius, well, what I do want to say is when you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, a transit with Mercury retrograde is actually going to feel more comfortable. You're not going to have the experiences that we hear out in pop culture as much. Or another little secret to this, if you have something called an oblique retrograde, this is not going to impact you in the same ways that it's going to impact everyone else, because everyone else is trying to go within and utilize the intuition, whereas someone who has Mercury retrograde in their chart or an oblique retrograde, it's more comfy. It's like, I've been doing this. So an oblique retrograde is when you have another retrograde planet aspecting your Mercury. I have this in my chart. I have Jupiter retrograde, and it is in a trine to my Mercury. So Mercury retrogrades tend to not be so harsh on me because I just naturally am more of a right-brained type of gal. So I wanted to put that out there as a mention. So the other dynamic with Sagittarius that I want us to speak about here is Sagittarius is dealing with our beliefs. And what we believe is what we give meaning to. It's also our higher learning. In regular astrology, they say that, Sagittarius is about higher learning, going to college, being educated, these types of things. I would take that further in a different way because Sagittarius also correlates with natural law. And we are very much conditioned in this day and age to really not connect with natural law. We are more conditioned and have been taught, we have learned, Mercury, to abide by more man-made types of laws, meaning this is what you do to be happy, this is what you should be taking if you want to do X, Y, and Z. And really, higher learning in Sagittarius is connecting and infusing oneself with the totality of nature. It's also why Sagittarius correlates with indigenous tribes that are infused with the totality of nature. So most of their learning and their education comes from eons of generations sitting out in nature and observing it and learning from nature and journeying, which is also a Sagittarius principle, into the intuitive function of their higher intelligence to really connect with these natural timeless laws that not only are observable in nature, but something that can be felt as a truth on an internal level. So, whereas Gemini can be an opinion, Sagittarius can be the truth. So, this is also where another just great archetype of this is if you're really wanting to learn about natural law, this is why people have certain animals that they feel very connected to that are teaching them something. I just had a client the other day. We were talking about our cats, and she was talking to me about her cat teaching her pretty much something similar to what my cat that is feral that adopted me has taught me, which is this independence and freedom to come and go as you please, that you're not owned by anyone, that you have your own way of existing that is very natural and instinctual, that has nothing to do with being domesticated, right? So that's just even another small little example of natural law, that how we can learn from animals or plants or things out in nature just from coexisting with them. It's really important for me to talk about this because this Mercury retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius can really be beckoning for us to go internal and to get out of the logical linear ways of thinking, because logic is it's relative. What was logical back in the 1800s is not logical now. And I'm not saying everything, but I'm saying there's a lot of principles as we evolve. What once was logic or logical is not anymore. And with Sagittarius, natural law is always held in truth. It's always held in something that can transcend time and becomes universal. And that's the connection to Pisces. All right. So this Mercury retrograde, we are being called to really tap into our intuitive function and to understand what our own personal truths are, where distortions have played out, what beliefs we've bought into that have nothing to do with our truths, what feels and is true for each one of us. So there's a lot of deconditioning that's wanting to go on right now. My hair is wild. I keep messing with it. Sorry. There's a lot of deconditioning that's wanting to go on right now around beliefs versus truths, around opinions versus truths. And we are really called on a collective level to tap into what has been lost or felt like it's needing to be recovered as a truth. These are all principles of Sagittarius. It's looking at what do you believe about yourself? And Sagittarius is also a fire sign. So it's pulling in this principle of self-actualization. What are you wanting to self-actualize through leaning on your intuition? Has something been coming up for you lately where you feel confused and things maybe aren't logically adding up, or they're not being understood, or you're having a really hard time assimilating the information that you have received, especially if it's been in conversations with others or you're having dynamics go on in your life? This is a time period until the middle of December to really tap into your intuition. And the best way to start practicing your intuition, which is another dynamic of this Mercury retrograde function. Retrogrades are relive, repeat in order to resolve. So we're resolving something around our intuition and self-actualization that is creative in whatever way that the soul sees fit. And it is about trusting oneself to know the truth of whatever circumstance it is that is coming into your life, and then to be able to speak that truth, to express that truth. So if you have been having a hard time with understanding something, part of the relive, redo in order to resolve dynamic with this Mercury retrograde, remember that Mercury is about learning in Virgo and in Gemini. And so there's this need to pull in the Virgoan expression of this Mercury as well. You've got all this data, this information. And now it's time to assimilate it and self-improve and be a student through tapping into one's own Sagittarian intuition. What is the truth about this? What do I need to know? Where is there resistance in my own learning or understanding? Where do I need to expand upon what it is that I've come to know? So you've got to remember that Mercury in Sagittarius is also ruled by Jupiter in Gemini retrograde. So there's this intensification of an individuating function. That is a retrograde dynamic. It's also an Aquarian dynamic of individuation, really throwing off the past in order to propel one forward. So we can see that even on collective levels, there's a lot of beliefs or propaganda or misinformation or information that's collected that there hasn't been a lot of Virgo-like discernment or discrimination. And so people are having to tap into their intuition right now to understand what is true, what is actually true, what am I observing out here? What is correlating on an internal level? So Jupiter and Gemini retrograde is also very much where we are called to individuate or to liberate. And this helps us retrograde resolve dynamics of where we have internalized certain messages right now as a truth whenever it's not a truth. And so this can be a bit disillusioning for some people. And that's also seen with the T-square happening with Saturn and Pisces from Jupiter and Mercury to that. That's like the apex of this T-square is Saturn and Pisces. So if we're wanting to decondition, conditioning is Saturn, Capricorn, and deconditioning, well, we're thinking of dissolving something, some type of structure and our consciousness to decondition. That's a Piscean phenomenon. So there's this time for us to really look at where we're needing to decondition from old beliefs and to have more discernment on the intake of information or what we are striving to learn about. It needs to be something that feels authentic to each one of us. Authenticity is a Sagittarian principle, and to allow our intuition to guide us through this process. That way, a restructuring of the consciousness can occur through eliminating and rebelling against the status quo of internalized beliefs that are not true. This is also this T-square where we can have an immense amount of inner expansion, Jupiter, Sag, through, because you've got to remember, Mercury and Jupiter are in mutual reception. This is like an ease of integration if we consciously work with this dynamic around our intuition and our left logical linear brain. So there's this dynamic of an immense amount of expansion can happen on personal levels through tapping into what feels true and authentic for each one of us. And we are really called to be very Sagittarian, Jupiterian right now. The things that we are not understanding about our specific personal situations going on, especially if you have something going on. Maybe you are wanting to start a new job. Maybe you want to express yourself or need to have a conversation with a family member. Maybe you're feeling disillusioned by a situation and you really don't know what is true. Reality feels a little warped right now. This is a time to tap into that Jupiterian Sagittarian function of posing a question where you're feeling that there's a restriction and you're having an issue around not understanding. And then allowing the intuition to seed in what the truth is. And here's the thing, is that doesn't always happen instantaneously. But if there is a sincere desire to understand something where you're feeling restricted and you're wanting to understand what is true, which way do I go? What choice do I make? Remember, Mercury has a dual nature. What choice do I make? Throughout this Mercury retrograde cycle, there can really be a deeper understanding of what it is that you're needing to do through the intuition. It's like, have you ever been in the shower driving and you've thought about something so much, and then all of a sudden, because you've had this sincere wish to understand, like, why is this happening and what is going on? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're not even thinking about it. It just drops into your consciousness. That's your intuition. And so this is a time to really be curious, Mercury, around the dynamics that you could be feeling confused around. Saturn and Pisces, the Piscean Neptunian energy can be causing or feeling like a bit of confusion is happening. And when we rely on our intuition, which is everyone has the ability to tap into this, we get to make correct choices that are guiding us on our own evolutionary path. The key is to not resist that dynamic whenever it comes up, and it's learning about how to trust and have faith, Pisces, in oneself, that my higher intelligence, my soul is directing me and is not going to lead me astray. So let me show this chart and explain this just a little bit to dive more into what it is that we're working on here, and then I can let you all go. So this is the Greenwich chart so you all can see. So Mercury is, well, whenever it's stationed retrograde, in the third house in Sag, ruled by Jupiter and Gemini, retrograde in the ninth, square to Saturn and Pisces. The ruler of Saturn is Neptune, retrograde. Okay. And this is moving towards Neptune. So this is going to enter into a balsamic conjunction later this year. So I want to see if there's anything else I'm needing. That's right. This Mercury is in an inconjunct to Uranus retrograde in Taurus, ruled by Venus and Capricorn in the fourth. So I want you to have this in your mind, and then I'm going to talk about this. So what I want us to think about here, since I've gone over these archetypes, this chart is really reflecting the key core underlying dynamics of this Mercury retrograde cycle. I feel like I need to take a drink of coffee before I move on. Excuse me. Okay. I've gone over the dynamic of throwing off old beliefs, that and beliefs being Sag, that Mercury retrograde and an inconjunct to Uranus and Taurus is about accelerating this dynamic of our evolution where we're needing to liberate from where we've over identified with certain types of learned information. That's also seen with Saturn squaring and a T-square to Mercury and Jupiter. Kind of went over this. This is really about when we're wanting to restructure our consciousness, we're needing to eliminate the over-identification of false beliefs. I had this experience, I've talked about it before. This is an interesting phenomenon. With Jupiter and Sag, there can be like this dynamic of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And a self-fulfilling prophecy is essentially you've bought into a belief about yourself and now you're fulfilling that belief through living it out, even if it's not a truth. So I talked about this a while back, but I'm actually even dealing with some of this right now in my family, which I find interesting. But whenever you have been told if you don't do this, this, or this, you're gonna be this, this, or this. I remember growing up, and I was really struggling with school. I was like one of those kids who was asked to skip grades, and I didn't skip grades because my parents didn't know if I was emotionally mature enough. And I was like a gifted kid whenever I was younger, right? And then I got to about fourth grade and everything it went downhill from there. I just was not interested in traditional school. I wanted to be in nature. I wanted to be hanging out at the creek. I wanted to be talking to animals. I was a what people would consider a weirdo, right? Which I'm not. I think a lot of you on here will understand this and relate on some type of level. But this was what I was learning through my school was nature. And I don't think that anyone around me could understand that. And because people could not understand that, I ended up getting a lot of projections thrown at me. If you don't do well in school, you're never going to amount to anything. If you don't do well in school, you're going to get a trade job. If you don't do well in school, you're going to turn to drugs and alcohol. If you don't do well in school, you're going to be, I hate this because I don't see anything wrong with this, quite frankly, you're going to be working at McDonald's and flipping burgers the rest of your life. Da 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 da. And at some point, because I resisted still doing the things that I needed to do, um, in the eyes of authority, Saturn, Capricorn kind of stuff here, my conditioning was if you don't have a traditional path of what it looks like to be successful, you're never going to be successful and you're never going to amount to anything. And so what ended up happening is I did do drugs. I ended up working in fast food. I ended up having two careers later on in my 20s that I didn't enjoy, nor did I really like. They didn't feel purposeful to me. I got really, really depressed because I felt like, what is the point of all of this? Luckily, I had a child at a young age that really anchored me to figure it out instead of just becoming extremely futile in my thinking. But all of the things that have been projected onto me, I truly believed them at the time. And so I felt this is where we can get, this sounds harsh, but we can be almost brainwashed by the information or the projections that we take in. And it wasn't until my Saturn return and then right before my 33rd birthday that I really liberated myself from these dynamics. And I chose to just exist as I am and to accept myself and my own truths. Sag. I've got Venus and Sag. Um, and to accept myself and my own truths and to know I can be successful, I can be an astrologer, I can do something non-traditional. And if I am not accepted by the people in my life around this, then that's not a reflection of who I am and my own authentic nature. That has nothing to do with me. That has to deal with them. So I'm bringing this up because a lot of people can be dealing with dynamics like this on some type of level. I'm not saying that it's going to be just like what I'm talking about. But it could be you've taken in beliefs that you could never, maybe you have a dream or a vision, Saturn and Pisces, that is wanting you to structure, to bring form and structure to this. And you're not believing in yourself because it sounds crazy, or you are afraid of what people might think. This is a time to be throwing those dynamics off and to tap into your own soul guidance, to journey inwards and to tap into your own soul guidance about what is the resistance around honoring my Sagittarian, Jupiterian authenticity and truth. That way, this restructuring of the consciousness can occur through you standing in your authentic nature. So it's almost like becoming an apprentice of your own authenticity. It's about recovering this right now in whatever way that it's looking for you. Are you someone who's been struggling with addiction? Saturn and Pisces, Neptune and Pisces ruling that. How has that played a role in your life lately? Where did that struggle come from? Were you a part of a family system where you were the container for their guilt, shame, and judgment? Did you take that on? Are you struggling with leaving, or are you struggling with having conversations with people because you're afraid if you speak your truth that you could um, be abandoned and that could ignite your own family wounds? There's so many ways that this could go. These are kind of some of the things I've been seeing lately, actually, in my practice of, I mean, I've been seeing a plethora, but like, I, this fear around not being able to be oneself or not being able to communicate something authentically for fear of being shamed or judged, for not being able to go out and do what feels authentic or to learn the thing that feels authentic because you're afraid that there could be judgment or shame or guilt around this. All of these things are wanting to be liberated from. And the truth is wanting to be reclaimed with this Mercury retrograde and Jupiter retrograde and this T squared to Saturn. And that Uranus in conjunct to Mercury is really where we could be confronted with others. It's it's in a full phase in conjunct. It's about to be, yeah, it's in a full phase in conjunct. And that's where there can just be this discord around one person's will meeting another person's will and the confrontations. In order to understand limiting beliefs or our own bias, even towards ourselves or to others or our intellectual structures, at some point we are confronted. That's also seen with the Mercury opposite Jupiter. And there can be this confrontation that happens where we're really being asked to look within and to objectify this dynamic to see if maybe we're missing something or if we're needing to liberate from over-identifying with some type of information. And then with Venus, the ruler of Uranus in Capricorn falling in the fourth house, it's around this feels secure for me to think this way. It feels secure for me to believe this, even if it's not healthy. It's all I've ever known. I will say before I end this that recently I've seen this in action. Recently, because you've got to remember that Venus is a key player with the inception of Mercury stationing retrograde. Venus is the ruler of that South Node as well. And Libra is about the ability to hear, whereas your Taurus is about the ability to listen to oneself. By the way, that Uranus and Taurus, in order to actualize what our intuition is pointing the North Star at for us, you have to listen to yourself, Taurus. That's part of liberating from dynamics where you're denying that. Okay, that's really important. The South Node in Libra, ruled by this Venus in Capricorn, and then this Mercury T square with Saturn and Jupiter, I'm going to tell you what I've already seen, and you might observe this as well. I have seen people continuously try to say something over and over. This is also Cassandra. Over and over again, trying to get their point across, not realizing that other people understand their point. They just don't agree with it. And people not being able to let it go. They actually feel like they're not heard when they really are. They're confusing or using, they're confusing not being heard synonymously with someone not agreeing with them. So there's this, and these confrontations are happening for a reason. It's for other people to understand the laws of the natural occurring law of relativity, that there can be more than one truth, which true for me may not be true for you. I can still hear where you're coming from, but that's not true for me. I have also seen people politically, oh my gosh, like um I know we've all seen this. This is this energy, by the way, of people over identifying with a belief so much that it's creating division, an extreme, South Node and Libra, right? Where someone is trying to express Mercury, hey, that's really insensitive. I didn't like what you said. And the other person is just pounding into them. This is what you need to believe. But how could you not believe this? How could you not da 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 da? I mean, I've seen this in different communities, um, all over. And so the point to this is one, it's confronting in order for a dissolving of the over identification, but one has to have the ability to hear and then to reflect. Venus and Capricorn, Saturn and Pisces on why did I call this in? What is this going? What's going on? What am I supposed to be learning from this? What is the message in this? Mercury, Sagittarius. So it's also not taking things so personally and remembering that there is that natural occurring law of relativity and also unity and diversity, meaning that we have to have diverse understandings of things in order for evolution to proceed. It's just right now within the collective, we are seeing people staunchly over identify with things that are not correlated to natural law. It's correlating to exclusionary, divisive behavior. And I'm not just talking about politically, it's running rampant in all facets. And so it's really the people who are more aligned with natural law, which is giving, sharing, and inclusion, even with plants, animals, the earth. It's almost like there is a complete and utter sadness, Saturn and Pisces, that is happening by having to observe this go down. So that is whenever we're meant to utilize this Mercury retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, to really understand the vision or to tap into our own creative principle, our own created voice that's rooted in the truth and not trying to do Sag in a distorted way where we're trying to convince and convert others of our truth. It's just planting a seed. This is how I felt. This is what I feel to be a fact or a truth, or this is what I believe. And if someone wants to go against it, okay, that gives you feedback. Either you can continue to hang out with that person, or you cannot, or you can have a conversation if you want to entertain that. But it's really about not taking certain things personally. And I'm not talking about things that are just core values, things that are wrong against humanity. I'm just talking about in general. This is heightened energy because of what's going on collectively with that Pluto opposite Mars that's been going on, all of this. There's an intensification of energy. There's a lot of sensitivity. And what we don't want to do is fall into the trap of trying to convince and convert others of our own truth because the truth does not need to be defended. When you're defending a truth, it's about yourself, it stands alone. And I want us to remember that. If someone is not hearing you around that, that's on them. It's not a reflection. Don't take that belief in that it's something you're not articulating it, you're not expressing it well enough. If they want clarification, they're going to ask. All right. So this is your Mercury retrograde conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing those of you for the Goddess Asteroid series. I'm going to try to do a promo video for that. I hate calling it that. A video that explains it more. Again, that first class is December 7th. And yes, come see me, you guys. Oh, that is something I do want to say. I'm getting busy with clients and so after this week I have I'm pulling out my phone to look at my calendar, excuse me, just so I can help you all. After this week, there are 2.5 weeks to book things with me before I will not be taking readings for until after the first of the year. And that is because I will have my kids at home. I want to be present with them. And so if you're wanting to get in before the new year, please go and look on my calendar and book if it's tutoring, if it's whatever, because I'm not, if you email me and you're wanting me to squeeze you into that last week of December, unfortunately, I'm not going to do that because I have my kids and my family that I want to be present for. So, and then after the new year, I will have more openings. So, happy holidays, and I hope to see you all soon. Until then, um, have a beautiful week. I will be back in a few days to give a new moon video. And yeah, I will see you all then.